Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily, the first English news program in Poland. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee. The dispute regarding electricity price has dominated Polish politics in recent weeks. Yesterday afternoon, the Sejm and the Senate at night adopted a bill lowering excess duties on electricity and transmission charges. This will allow maintaining current electricity prices of 2019 at the current level. The bill is now waiting for signature of the Polish president, Andrzej Duda.
New legal solutions give the possibility to maintain electricity prices in the coming year at the same level as in 2018, Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki assessed in a special recording. It is known that electricity prices are rising mainly through the climate package, but the mechanisms used in the law mean that the prices will be maintained at the same level. The Minister at the President's office, Paweł Mucha, said that the decision by the President can be expected in a short time. The opposition, on the other hand, describes that the bill is a kind of security assurance, which is to give a parliamentary election win to the governing party next year. Although the majority, including the opposition, voted in favor of the new regulations, there were 3 deputies against and 17 abstained from voting. Similarly, in the Senate, majority, including the opposition, voted for the bill, 7 did not vote, and just 1 was against. It's just a bluff. These prices will not increase only for a year. It's a maneuver to not lose the election. Law and Justice Party politicians argue that the mechanisms used in the law will be used for more than a year. Law and Justice reduced the excise tax on energy, and this excise duty was reduced permanently if no one changes these excise energy prices, which of course depends also on the many other factors, but these solutions guarantee that energy prices for 2019 and for the next years will be low. A similar bill lowering excise taxes and electricity was submitted before Christmas by the same Deputy Speaker Stanisław Tyszka from Kukiz 15 movement. In his opinion, the law submitted by the government is a good course of action. He considers the procedure of introduction of this bill as scandalous, especially the amendment introduced just 2 hours before the start of the same session. For example, the Prime Minister's amendment, which assumed adding 9 billion zlotys from the state treasury to keep the electricity prices at the same level. This is a scandal. This kind of proceedings are a shame to the parliament. This should not be done in one day like it is pushed now. The price increases were expected for 3 years, and what they did is only a whitewash. The price increases are going to come anyway, just later. According to the industry, renewable energy sources indicate that the money intended for stopping electricity bill increases should be invested in the development of the so-called green energy, windmills and solar panels. Positively, new regulations are evaluated by publicists. During this time is a good moment to reflect on further steps. This is not just a political maneuver, as it was also done so that it would not slow down the economy. The new law will come into force on January 1st, under which the excise duty per megawatt hour will be reduced from 20 to 5 zlotys, and the transit fee will be reduced by 95%. The bill also provides for compensation for companies trading in energy.
The German prosecutor's office and police released an official statement informing that a 25-year-old Polish woman shot in the infamous Neukölln district of Berlin on Thursday evening died in a hospital at night between Friday to Saturday.
The Polish woman was shot this Thursday night in the Neukölln district under unclear circumstances. After 11 p.m., the anonymous informant told the fire brigade about the unconscious woman lying on the street. According to the police, the unknown perpetrator shot her from close distance. As explained by the Berliner Zeitung newspaper, eyewitnesses heard a loud quarrel between several people earlier on at the place of crime. The investigation taken by the German police is still ongoing.
This passing year was very successful for LOT Polish Airlines. The company is set to finish the year with a profit of almost 200 million zlotys. LOT managed to carry close to 9 million passengers, which exceeded the company's forecast.
2018 rok kończy się dla LOT.
LOT Polish Airlines finished 2018 off with yet another great success. This year ended up being very profitable for the company, which means that we are well on our way to be a steadily growing firm. It is yet another successive year in which the amount of flights we carry grew at a record pace. We established new connections, with many being very important for the Polish diaspora in the US, such as Rzeszów Newark, or the new international direct flights such as Warsaw Singapore, as well as a groundbreaking making new direct flight from Budapest to New York and Chicago. None of this would have happened without our new and modernized air fleet. For the first time, LOT Polish Airlines flew passengers on Boeing 787 Dreamliner. This all translates to a record high number of yearly passengers of almost 9 million. The upcoming year would no doubt be challenging, but we are not going to slow down. We would definitely want to break that 9 million passengers barrier again, have 90 airplanes in our fleet, with 15 of them being Dreamliner's 787. And naturally, we would like to accomplish all that while remaining profitable. I think it is also important to point out that the next year, 2019, will be the company's 90th anniversary. Such a beautiful anniversary certainly requires us to work even harder.
A przypomnę, że 2019 rok to jest rok naszych 90. urodzin, więc taka piękna rocznica z całą pewnością zobowiązuje do jeszcze bardziej wytężonej pracy.
Yesterday, another 308 African migrants arrived in the port of Algeciras in Andalusia, Spain. The migrants were plucked off of the Liberian coast by the NGO vessel Protect Via Open Arms. The governments of Malta and Italy denied the ship the right to dock and disembark the migrants in the ports.
Following the decision taken by the new government in Rome to stop NGO vessels from ferrying over migrants from Africa to Italy, the migration flows have been rerouted to Spain, which has seen the number of new arrivals more than double in 2018. As a result, almost 60,000 African migrants have arrived this year. The vast majority of them traveled to Spain on dinghies across the Gibraltar Strait from Morocco, but thousands have also been ferried over by NGO vessels operating just a couple of miles of the Libyan coast. Representatives of NGOs are dismayed with the new circumstances in which they are forced to sail a long distance to Spain in order to disembark migrants in Europe. All of them have arrived feeling tired because the only port that was available to us was the one in the Mediterranean that was farthest away. They have sailed 1,100 miles on the deck of the boat in winter. They have had to work miracles to get them blankets, medicine and food. The director of the NGO operating the Proactiva Open Arms vessel argues that the EU must step in to force the European countries located close by Libya to open up their ports to NGO vessels. It's inappropriate of the European Union to fail to respond, and it has had to be Spain because the vessel has a Spanish flag that has to assign a port to disembark these people. We very much regret this situation. The increase in migrant arrivals has shaken up the political scene in Spain. The newly established right-wing populist party Vox managed to win almost 12% in the recent local election in Andalusia, the region taking in the largest number of migrants. The party has also surged in recent nationwide polls from around 1% last year to around 10%. The parliamentary elections will take place next year, and illegal migration is expected to be one of the main issues.
That's it for today. See you next time on Poland Daily. But stay tuned for the Poland Daily Weather Report, followed by Poland Daily Business.
Welcome to Poland Daily Weather. Let's take a look at the forecast for tonight. A warm night across the country with temperatures between 2 degrees in Białystok and Lublin to 6 degrees in Szczecin and Koszalin. Some snowfall is expected around Rzeszów. Rain will appear throughout the country. And now over to tomorrow. Some overcast weather in central and northwestern Poland, but in Katowice and Kraków more sun is expected. The temperatures will range from 3 degrees in Olsztyn and Białystok to 7 in the northwest. Let's see the forecast for the following 3 days. On Monday, snowfall is expected in the south. More clearings will appear in central and the north, a maximum 4 degrees along the Baltic coast. More sun is expected on Tuesday. Slight snow will appear in the southeast. Temperatures will significantly increase to 8 degrees in the west coast. On Wednesday, temperatures slow down, the maximum 3 degrees in the northwest and a minimum -1 degree in northern eastern Poland. Slight snowfall is expected across the Poland. Sun will appear as well. Thank you for watching and goodbye.
Welcome to Poland Daily Business. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee. Some 235,000 work permits were issued last year to foreigners in Poland, with the number expected to be higher this year. The figure is almost twice that of 2016, with 81.7% of permits going to Ukrainians. In Silesia, from January to September this year, the province governor issued 14,800 work permits. At the end of 2017, the figure was 23,000. For comparison, in 2015, there were 2,000, and in 2016, 7,000. Poland's Sopot beach has been included on a list of the world's top 50 city beaches compiled by Canadian online travel agency Flight Network. The list is based on opinions by tourism experts, travel journalists, bloggers, and tour operators. Sopot Beach is listed in 48th place. Flight Network writers on his website stated that the beach is famous for its atmosphere, seaside restaurants, shop, and plenty of places to soak in the culture of the Polish Riviera. Sopot is one of Poland's most popular Polish resorts. Its 515-meter-long wooden pier is the longest structure of its kind in Europe. LOT Polish Airlines, the flag carrier of Poland, has won the title for the best airline in Eastern Europe. The award was granted by Global Travelers readers, who includes industry specialists and frequent travelers. The award is a proof that LOT is an appreciated and increasingly recognizable airline on the international markets, LOT said. A ceremonial gala, which saw awards handed out in 70 categories, was held in Los Angeles. LOT has won the title of the best airline in Eastern Europe for the second time. That's it for today. See you next time on Poland Daily Business. Next up, our very own Alexander Wojciechowski with his special guests.
Poland Daily Business Edition. Tonight our guest is Matthew Tyrmand, American political analyst. Sir, welcome to the show. Let's start from Brexit. Negotiations are over, and the question to us is, once Britain will leave United Europe, will Poland be missing its 6 billion trade surplus with United Kingdom?
Well, I think that's a little bit of a simplistic take. That is what the Eurocrats would like to promote. First off, the deal has not been agreed. It has been accepted by people like Juncker and the Eurocrats in Brussels because Theresa May, spineless jellyfish that she is, and fake Brexiteer, as many of the Tories are, it's tough to distinguish these days the difference between Tory and Labour of the last 30 years evolution. She acceded to every single Brussels European Union push, whether it's the fishing rights, which is one of the main reasons why so many people turned out for Brexit, because Brits, Scots, fishing their own ancestral waters has been restricted by the EU. She's acceded to those. She's acceded to many of the demands of the European Union. Even British rule over Gibraltar will now be up in the air as an X factor. So this is rather ridiculous, and it still needs to pass with the British people and their parliamentary representation, which I do not think it will. Even Jeremy Corbyn has come out and said that Labour does not like this deal. So I actually think that we're going to see a lot more gyrations, and it will get rejected in British Parliament, and then they'll have to go back to the EU and hopefully change things so that it actually reflects the will of the British people and not the will of the Brussels bureaucracy and technocratic elite. In terms of Poland's impact to Poland on it, yes, on paper it looks this way, that there'll be now a trade gap that develops because of the British exit. But trade is not static. Trade is not single variable. I actually believe that Britain will become a much more potent trading counterparty for European individual sovereigns after they get on their own and create their own trade deals. So I think that there will be many opportunities for Polish-British bilateral trade, knowledge transfer, exchange to flourish in a stronger way over the long term. Poland has some of the best human capital at the best cost to those who have higher cost structures to their human capital, Britain being one of the highest in Europe. I think there's going to be many, many opportunities for Britain and Poland to work on major human capital service projects, as well as industrial manufacturing OEM style projects.
Let's take a few steps back and explain how this has happened. A few years ago, we had a growing European Union with political unity, of cooperation, of prosperity. That's what Mr. Juncker said. And now the thing is falling apart. Why, do you think?
It is falling apart, and it's because the whole thing was built as an economic trade union. And the one thing the left and right generally agrees on, which is good, is that nations that trade together and people that trade together don't war against one another. So free trade is a very, very positive thing. It allows for the societies to economically flourish, achieve prosperity in working together. The idea that the European Union, as some sort of super state, was going to solve all the world's problems, or especially the problems vis-a-vis their constituent countries, I've always thought was wrong because it was sold under a false pretense. Economic union was supposed to be a free trade zone where you could move people, goods, services, and capital across the continent. Okay, but it became a political harmonization project really centered around French academic idealism, the sort of 50s and 60s French Academy that really was the intellectual push for the project, and then the German economic hegemony. The industrial output capital of Europe is Germany, very, very cultural, and very at odds with cultures of countries like Greece, Italy, Spain, Portugal, the Mediterranean economies. And this idea that Germany would be able to coordinate the major economic pushes. If you look at the real intellectual, quote-unquote, minds behind the European Central Bank, it's been a lot of German bankers, people like Schäuble. And this is now going up in smoke with Brexit because when it got stressed, it was a bit of a Ponzi scheme. You keep adding people and countries, you could have growth. Well, they've sort of run out of major economies to add to the project, and it hit a wall concurrent to the American financial crisis and global banking crisis. And then you've seen, now it's been taking on water, and they're putting Band-Aids into bullet wounds. And this inflected in June 2016 when the Brits decided to leave. Now you've got this 50-year, 60-year aggregation of people and sovereigns, and now it's inflected. And I think it's the first of many. I think the Italians are playing a game to, in the short term, get more infrastructure funds, but in the long term, they'll look to hold a referendum on exiting. If you look at Austria joining the 3 Cs, and pushing for much stronger immigration and border regulations. The whole project is starting to fall apart, which I'm in favor of. I know that Poles, by and large, appreciate it. I think that Poland will stand on its own 2 feet much more successfully than every other country in Europe when they do not have the lever of European Union technocracy weighing on their sovereign decision-making.
Matthew Thurman, thank you very much. And that was it for tonight's Poland Daily Business.
Welcome to Poland Daily Weather. Let's take a look at the forecast for tonight. A warm night across the country with temperatures between 2 degrees in Białystok and Lublin to 6 degrees in Szczecin and Koszalin. Some snowfall is expected around Rzeszów. Rain will appear throughout the country. And now over to tomorrow. Some overcast weather in central and northwestern Poland, but in Katowice and Kraków more sun is expected. The temperatures will range from 3 degrees in Olsztyn and Białystok to 7 in the northwest. Let's see the forecast for the following 3 days. On Monday, snowfall is expected in the south. More clearings will appear in central and the north, a maximum 4 degrees along the Baltic coast. More sun is expected on Tuesday. Slight snow will appear in the southeast. Temperatures will significantly increase to 8 degrees in the west coast. On Wednesday, temperatures slow down, the maximum 3 degrees in the northwest and a minimum -1 degree in northern eastern Poland. Slight snowfall is expected across the Poland. Sun will appear as well. Thank you for watching and goodbye.
Welcome to Poland Daily Culture. I'm Paulina Adlerstein.
And I'm John Carter, and you join us here today from Potocki Palace.
Over 70 years have passed since the end of the Second World War, but even so, this has not been anywhere near long enough to recover the majority of lost Polish cultural property. Polish wartime losses are considered to be movable cultural property lost from public, private, and church collections from within the post-1945 borders of Poland as a result of the Second World War.
I'm here with Agata Mogielewska, Chief Specialist at the Department of Restitution of Cultural Property. Welcome to Poland Daily Culture, Ms. Agata.
Thank you, good morning.
So let's start off. Could you tell us a little something about what exactly is the aim of your department?
Because of the World War II, Poland lost almost 70% of its cultural heritage. So we now in Ministry of Culture do everything what we can to rebuild our cultural heritage. Because of the World War II, Poland lost, we don't know how much exactly, how many artworks were in Poland before the war and how many works of art is now looted and are somewhere in the world in private houses or in museums collections in other countries. We won't be able to say how many. It's very hard to count. After the Second World War, it was announced that 500,000 works of art were looted. But this number is only about objects of public institutions and from the territory of interwar Poland. We lost our works of art because of a military action, so like bombardment of churches, of museums, of private houses, but also by planning looting, by Nazi occupation power administration, by soldiers, by also by thieves. Because storage or museums were simply plundered by people who will stay here, and they they took those artworks, and that's why since 1990s in the Ministry of Culture, Ministry of Culture has been gathering data about looted artworks. To date, we registered 63,000 works of art, sculptures, paintings, even ceramics or architectural fragments from palaces. So every object which is cultural object is registered in our database. Why only 63,000 when I said about 500,000? It's because German initially destroyed museums' inventories or just simply took them with the looted objects. Public collections and families' archives and private collections were simply burned. So we don't know how many of artworks were before the war in Poland and how many of them were looted, but we do the best what we can to count them, because when we don't know what we are looking for, we just don't know, we won't find it.
So I guess it's quite a sort of difficult and complicated process. Could you explain a little how the process of recovery works?
So recovering of looted artworks is one of the most important tasks of the Ministry of Culture. But when we want to recover something, we have to first find it. So ministry employees every day are searching auction houses' websites, museums' collections online, in searching for objects which are registered in our database. We also received information from art historians and other enthusiasts who do this as well for their reason for scientific researchers. So they just found sometimes an object which is registered in our database and inform us about it. Then we can start our procedure. So first, we have to confirm that the painting of the other cultural object is the one we are looking for. So we ask art historians, conservators to go to the auction house, to the museum, and examine the object. When they confirm that it's the object we are looking for, we prepare a restitution claim. A restitution claim is a claim with documents, which is most important documents confirming Polish provenance of the object. So every museum inventories, bills confirming that museum bought this painting before the war, and this is sending to our to the other side, to the current possessor of the object, and then the final step is the negotiations. Sometimes we use the help of a law firm, because when we found an object abroad, we have to obey the local law. And sometimes the legal status of the object is it's not easy to determine, and we have to use the help of the specialized law firm in a given country, because we don't know the law of the other countries. And our paramount aim is to recover a looted artwork. So the negotiation ended up with unconditional return, or sometimes a settlement. Very rarely we go to the court in recovering of looted artworks.
Well, thank you very much for joining us here, Ms. Agata Modzelewska. That's all we have time for on Poland Daily Culture. Thank you.
The Ministry of Culture and National Heritage constantly monitors the international art market in search of Polish war losses. It verifies digitized public collections abroad and uses many other resources to recover lost cultural assets. Currently, the Division for Looted Art, operating as part of the Department of Cultural Heritage Abroad and Wartime Losses, is conducting nearly 80 restitution proceedings in Poland and abroad. During the last 3 years, the Ministry of Culture and National Heritage regained, among other, the following paintings: Stormy Scene with Ship by Simon de Vlieger, a village street scene with ruins of castle by Robert Śliwiński, 18th century Chinese-style furniture from the King John III's palace in Wilanów, collection of over 300 ethnographic objects from Göttingen, now returned to the Ethnographic and Archaeological Museum in Łódź.
Thank you very much for joining us here today at Poland Daily Culture.
Join us again tomorrow.
The Soviet Union invaded Poland from the east 16 days after Germany invaded Poland from the west. The campaign of mass prosecution in the newly acquired areas began immediately, adding more dread and suffrage to the already war-torn Warsaw. Our guest vividly recounts their lives under such oppressive regime. The end of German occupation did not spell happy ending for our veteran guest, Mrs. Lumiła Niepolska. Having witnessed countless tragedies of war, the new occupational force of the communist regime is nothing short of familiarity. Post-war reality is yet another hurdle to overcome for our well-seasoned guest.
In the beginning, we were treated neutrally, but later it turned out that we, the Scouts, were thought of as simply henchmen of the bourgeois. Because of that, we do not have the right to function in the newly socialist homeland. Because of that treatment, the Scouting Association was disbanded in 1949.
Nie mamy prawa w socjalistycznej ojczyźnie funkcjonować. I w 1949 roku harcerstwo zostało rozwiązane.
However, before that happened, the remaining Scouts were being arrested, sent to prison, expelled from schools, not being admitted to schools, a number of various forms of oppression. For instance, the now famous scout Jan Rodowicz, codename Anoda, an excellent scoutmaster, one of the bravest.
Kolega Anoda, znakomity harcmistrz, jeden z najodważniejszych, wspaniałych chłopaków, który zaraz po wojnie, on się nazywał Janek Rodowicz. On zorganizował ekshumację.
He was studying architecture at the university. He was abducted from his home on Christmas Eve 1946, and then they killed him. They just killed him. Only now does some of this information finally see the light of day.
Z domu i go zabili. Normalnie go zabili. Naprawdę dopiero teraz wiele rzeczy wychodzi.
People were afraid of speaking up before. They feared sharing their stories. I was trying to get into university in 1951 to study art history. I passed the theory exam, passed the technical exam, and then came time for an ideological exam. And the first question I was asked was, "What do you think of the Scouts?"
Egzamin ideologiczny. I pierwsze pytanie, to co ja sądzę o harcerstwie. Ja powiedziałam, że harcerstwo, czyli po waszemu scouting.
I said that scouting is the only organization that can raise youth to be responsible young adults, mature and responsible. And because of that, I did not get in.
Dojrzałych, odpowiedzialnych ludzi. I nie dostałam się oczywiście. I tak był na przykład nasz kolega, komendant warszawskiego oddziału o pseudonimie Motek, dostał się na Politechnikę i go następnego...
And there was also a similar case with our friend, chief of the Warsaw Scout Unit at the time, codename Motek. He was admitted into the Institute of Technology, and the very next week he was called in for a talk. Then he was asked what is he coming from the great ranks doing at a communist-run university, and then he was expelled.
Natomiast to, co nas wiązało z szarymi szeregami i te wszystkie przedwojenne jeszcze zasady, to żeśmy kultywowali w swoich zastępach, w swoich towarzyskich spotkaniach.
To be enlisted in any organization just to do what you should, just do what you are supposed to do. You don't need to be a part of any organization. I am doing what is needed until today, as you can see. Nevertheless, I was not enlisted, so now I have no privileges, no appropriate bonuses, nothing at all. But I still do what I'm supposed to do.
Natomiast nie zapisana byłam wtedy, w związku z tym żadnych uprawnień, żadnych zniżek, żadnych ulg, nic takiego nie mam. Ale co trzeba robić, to robię.
Is actor and longtime resident of Warsaw, Wiktor Skorwanski. Having grown up during the post-war era, our guest recalls vividly the life under the communist occupation, giving us snippets of stories showcasing what it's really like under the regime of the Soviet occupants.
Ojciec z początku pracował.
My father worked in some factory, maybe on Szpotańskiego Street, but later he started his own business. We lived across a market, that is where he set up his booth and sold bicycle parts, replacement parts for record players and vinyl records. That is also where my interest in classical music and singing came from.
Stąd się też zainteresowałem muzyką poważną, śpiewem i tak dalej. No ale to chyba po 5 iluś latach niestety...
However, after 5 years, the shop had to be shut down because of horrendous tariffs. We just could not make ends meet.
Można było, jak to się mówi, wyżyć nawet z prowadzenia prywatnego biznesu. Ale to nie jest najważniejsze. Chociaż prywaciarstwo było za prywatną, nie powiedziałem, ale prywatna inicjatywa była bardzo...
Private entrepreneurship was eradicated at that time.
Pamiętam jako dziecko, jak się bardzo wstydziłem w szkole, jak się nauczycielki
I remember how embarrassed I was when teachers asked me at school where my father worked. Everyone would name the factories their father worked in, meanwhile I said mine had a private initiative. To me, that was a terrible shame. I could not go to summer camps because of that fact. Private initiative, in the eyes of the people at the time, meant that you exploited people.
To był najgorszy prywaciarz, to wyzyskiwacz, to nie, absolutnie. Pamiętam, na lekcji przysposobienia wojskowego prowadził to sympatyczny nawet.
I remember an incident during a basic military training class which was taught by a major of the Polish People's Army. The major said, "Tell me the cases of barrage balloons being used to defend big cities during the Second World War."
Wojny światowej przypadki obrony balonowej wielkich miast w Europie. No i kolega Jacek, już nie chcę mówić nazwiska, wstaje, obywatel pułkowniku.
My friend Jacek stood up and said, "Major, barrage balloons were used in the defense of London."
Była obrona Londynu. Pan major poczerwieniał, zaindyczył się. Londynu?
The major went red, his eyes became wide with anger as he shouted, "London? Have you never heard of Moscow?"
Nie można było nawet jakby wymienić tej zachodniej stolicy, tego Londynu, bo tam przecież Radio Londyn, itd., tylko Moskwa, Moskwa. Budził się człowiek rano.
The boy sat down, ashamed, because all we were taught was Moscow, Moscow, Moscow. I would wake up and listen to the radio. They played beautiful arrangements, but everything was Russian. All the literature was in Russian, all the bookshops, every book fair was full of Soviet literature. Naturally, there was some good Russian literature, the classics like Tolstoy or Dostoevsky. However, most of the literature written over there was socialist propaganda. Everything was read in those books to symbolize the Soviets.
Ale głównie to były te socrealistyczne historie. Było tej masę propagandy, głupoty. Czerwieni, wszędzie było czerwono, czerwono, czerwono.
The Russian campaign of political murders and other forms of repression targeting Polish figures of authority, such as military officers, police, and priests, began a wave of arrests and summary executions. It is hard to imagine living under such hard circumstances, one event after another. But as the country endures, Poland's story became not only one of tragedy, but also of bravery and resilience. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee. See you next time on Poland Daily History.
Warsaw Chopin Airport. This is where your Poland adventure begins. Whether you are taking off to some ordinary or some exotic destination, you'll feel like a kid in a candy store. Check in to check out. Warsaw's Chopin Airport. Your gateway to adventure. In this show, we're going to take you around Warsaw Chopin Airport and show you some of the things that we enjoyed during a week at the airport. We're going to talk to Adrian Kubicki. We're going to talk to Nicholas Richardson and a few other people. You'll see a roundup of leading topics of the week. We hope you'll enjoy it. You just came back from Los Angeles, and Lot received an award. You just we were talking about that before. Tell us about
the best airline in Europe.
What?
Granted by actually readers of one of the most popular travel magazines in the U.S., Global Traveler.
Holy smoke, kids! That's pretty good, don't you think?
Yeah. For second consecutive year. Mm-hmm. Quite accomplishment, because this is the survey, which is not granted by any publishing house or people who try to judge which airline is better than the other. It's actually granted by readers, so people who travel, frequent travelers. This is probably the most valuable prize that any airline can get. What is really good for us that we're starting to be recognized as the airline of Central and Eastern Europe, and the major we reached out to the Premier League of European carriers, European airlines. We are recognized among other big airlines. Maybe this is not surprising here in Poland, but you have to understand, United States of America, population of what, like 150 million?
No, the population of the United States is about 340 million.
340 million.
Yeah.
Many airlines flying to the US, most of them much larger than LOT Polish Airlines, so it's not easy actually to build awareness. And this is something what we are accomplishing. Maybe we are not there yet, but the more awards we receive, it shows that we are doing a good job.
Now listen, wait a second. Am I tall enough to get on this flight? I'm a little worried. I'm tall enough, or do I stand on my tiptoes?
No.
Is everybody your size in your country? What's your name?
My name is Peter.
My neck is starting to hurt. I need a ladder. I gotta, maybe I need to stand up here. How long have you been working here, Pete?
It's from about 6 days.
You just started, and they were looking for somebody to fix the signs without a ladder, or
no.
You can fix the things over the no.
But when I walk around, the guys who see me in the check-ins, they scared me. They think
they're afraid of you.
Yes,
because they think you're the guy from 007 movies, James Bond movies. Okay, now, next time I'm getting a basketball game together, I'm calling you, okay? I'm calling you to play on my team. I'm going to give you the ball, and you're just going to put it in, okay?
The efficiency is key for all our business class passengers. For those who travel on business purposes, they don't come to airport too early, much in advance. They want to squeeze everything in the most limited time they possibly can. And for that purpose, we always say to these passengers, travel on LOT and from Warsaw, because this is the most efficient airport. As you can see, you have only a few steps from check-in zone to the security, which is dedicated, so-called fast track. This is dedicated security for business class passengers. No queues whatsoever, only few steps from the check-in. And you pass the security, and only a few steps above the security, if we can present it, upstairs from the security, we have our business lounge. You can see through the window. This is where you end just prior to boarding the airplane. You can work a little bit, you have a food there, wide choice of beverages. You can spend your time working, relaxing before your journey.
Planes, trains, and automobiles. All great ways of getting around, but if you're at an airport, pretty likely you're going to be taking an airplane. A big old jet airliner somewhere in the world, some destination, far or possibly near. In Poland, you might be headed to Krakow. You might be headed to Warsaw from one of the other cities. You might be headed to Wrocław or Poznan or Gdansk. You might be going to Lublin. We have a lot of choices. Those are all the major, most of the major cities. I forgot Łódź, but it's very close. You can take a train to Łódź if you are going to fly long distance. Nothing like that beautiful Boeing Dreamliner. Quite an airplane, roomy and very comfortable, and great for flying to Toronto, New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, any of those kind of places in the States. I don't know if it flies to Los Angeles, but I know it flies to the East Coast. Great airplane.
And what does LOT mean?
Actually, it doesn't mean anything. It's not a shortcut from anything, what some people think of LOT, that it comes from some broader name. It meant flight, and it means flight.
It means flight.
So it doesn't have direct translation. We use just LOT all over the world. It's actually very nice to use in English as a promotion code, like a lot of.
A lot of something, yeah.
Yeah.
That's very good. That should be a tagline. You can buy Chopin vodka and Chopin
on board.
Chocolates and Chopin all kinds of things.
Everything was associated with Chopin. We do basically the same thing as Austrian do with Mozart. We're very proud of Chopin, and it's actually well known.
He's
Remember
fantastic.
that we have international Chopin contest here in Poland every few years. Another is coming in 2020. And I hope the pianists will come on lot here to Warsaw to play piano, to be part of the contest.
There's a big contest every year,
but
right,
it's not every year.
They can use the airport to get here for the contest.
Well, they sort of must. Because, as you said,
it's a long way from Japan if you don't fly. There's a long relationship between Boeing and a lot of airlines, and you were actually one of the first companies doing the transatlantic flights.
It needs to be said that LOT, despite relatively small size comparing to other airlines, and pretty unfortunate location, because obviously being part of the Soviet bloc really stopped us from growing, and we couldn't grow enough connections back in the Soviet times.
Those darn Russians again.
Right.
Yeah. Doggone.
We still were capable to remain probably the most innovative airline in the sky. We were the first airline within the Soviet bloc, to implement Boeing aircraft, so Western aircraft, to our fleet. In the 90s,
That's
we
interesting.
operated.
How did that happen?
In the 80s, we made this decision that LOT needs new airplanes to serve transatlantic flights, and we were actually flying all over the world, to Bangkok, to Singapore, to Los Angeles, to Alaska, believe me or not, to Brazil, to you name it. And we needed really reliable aircraft, which is comfortable enough, which is the most technologically advanced, and we decided to implement 767 to our fleet. It served since then for 25 years. Now, if you compare our facilities with any airport in the US, you have to say that we made the progress, whereas not all of the airports made the progress in the US.
They haven't. I mean, the only reason in the last few years got decent food in JFK, and Dulles is a disaster. When you fly I fly to Washington a lot because I'm from Virginia and live there. You know, that's my airport.
The problem of the infrastructure all over Europe, Western Europe, and the same in the US, is that these constructions were built in the 60s. They are not really used to be hubs for people who are transferring to other connections, or basically to accommodate that large amount of passengers.
This great amount
and
of
I'll
traffic.
tell you that we're going to see the same problem very soon here, because we grow so fast that this airport is actually already too small to actually fit to our growth path.
Did you ever see the old airport?
I did see the original old airport in the very early 90s. And It was quite a spooky experience.
What was that like?
Pretty awful. I mean, it was a very simple airport. You landed and you went to passport control, and you were in these sort of plastic boxes, and the door closed behind you, and you were faced by somebody from the army or something. It was all pretty spooky. Then you arrived, you got through, and there was the entrance hall where you collect your luggage was like an African airport, sort of pretty chaotic. And then you found your way to the town centre. So this airport, of course, is a fantastic improvement.
Hey, some African airports are a lot nicer than that airport was.
Yes, they are.
I know the Russians didn't know much about aesthetics, did they?
Well, I think they didn't know much about aesthetics. They didn't want people travelling either, by definition.
Yeah, they didn't want people travelling, so they wanted to make the experience as horrible as possible. And what a great thing that the Russians are no longer here.
Yeah, they're not very good on certain things, and air travel is probably
they're not in charge.
They're not welcoming,
they're doing okay over there.